Coming to you from District 3, an innovation hub at Concordia University in Montreal, my name is Zachary, and let me ask you a question. What happens when just a handful of people decide to start something new?
I won't tell you how many times a day I Google how to do my job.
Entrepreneurship is a long journey. It's a roller coaster of emotions.
C'est être optimiste à long terme puis pessimiste à court terme.
Who are your clients?
La persévérance, la vision, la capacité de monter une bonne équipe.
You really get to know it pretty fast because you're in the middle of everything. As long as we keep learning a new skill, building new relationship, we're on this journey.
The hardest thing I've ever done, and also the most gratifying.
In genetics, it's called the founder effect, a small group of outliers that can shape generations to come. Entrepreneurship is the very same. At District 3, startups and entrepreneurs, step by step, with the help of coaches, are building projects that can change how we experience the world. This podcast is here to share their stories, to give you resources, and to remind you, you don't need to have it all figured out to launch your project. Because the founder effect isn't just about beginnings, it's about how we build, how we learn, and how little by little we create impact. Alan, what's intellectual property?
I'm not sure if I know what intellectual property is, honestly. Like, what defines intellectual property?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Expensive, complicated, necessary.
So for me, it's copyright, legal, asset.
Cool. Thank you.
Private, secure, I don't know, mine.
Hefty fees, wrong perception, interesting concept.
Protection, innovation, and leverage.
Lawyer, patent, expensive.
Innovation, strategy, that's it. I don't have a third word.
And if you had to explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, how would you explain intellectual property?
It's like peeing around the sandbox to tell others that this is your sandbox.
So at the top of the show, we heard a bunch of different takes on IP, but there are still a lot of unanswered questions and myths to debunk. What effect can intellectual property have on your new invention? How do you build a business around your IP? To help us unpack some widely held beliefs and uncover blind spots in the world of protecting your novel invention, we'll hear from current founders, a patent agent, and a founder who now works at a venture capital firm. This is where we start. Let's hear from Steph, a scientist who ventured beyond the lab and stumbled into entrepreneurship. She had it all, and then it got complicated.
My first instinct was not to start a business. We had this whole idea that the tech transfer office was just gonna get so excited and patent this and immediately sell it to Merck or something, and then we were gonna be so successful. And we had a meeting where it became really clear that that wasn't gonna happen. So as soon as that meeting ended, we kind of evaluated our options. And one thing that the woman from the tech transfer office had mentioned was that, if you want, you guys can launch a startup. And I really did not understand what that meant, but we were both so hell-bent on bringing this to market that we were just like, guess we're starting a startup. So I'm Steph. I am a former founder. I don't want to say former scientist because I think people stay kind of scientists forever, but was a science kid and then kind of fell into entrepreneurship. And I really loved the fact that I was able to translate my own research to real life. But I went to a kind of trade show and I made my first in-person sale. And the person who had just bought my product actually used it in front of me. And I saw my product actually treat their pain point. And that was epic, to think that you made something in the lab, you ideated this thing and this is actually helpful for someone. And then to see other people then flock to our booth, buy the product, it was so overwhelming and so cool. It was really fulfilling. And then I realized I don't think you can get that in research.
Within a year, Steph had proof of concept, a product that heals an actual pain, a validated market, and first paying customers. But one crucial piece was missing:
First of all, I had no idea that anything I invented in the university as a student belonged mostly to, or partially to the university. That was a shock to me when I found that out.
What did you go in thinking?
I didn't even think about that, to tell you the truth, but I didn't think it was so much. I think it's a 60-40 split, like if the university, let's say, pays for the development of the IP. And that just sounded like a lot, 60% to the inventors, and then the student is a portion of that. So I was lucky that my professor was willing to go 50-50 with me on our 60% portion, but to think that then my university owns more than me is surprising. But yeah, I went in not thinking about it, and then it's basically the university owning a portion of your IP means that you have signatures to get before things can move forward. You have to get people's approval before you build certain things within the business. You have to report to them every year. You have to hope that, I don't know, people sign the documents on time that you send and that isn't holding up your patent application or whatever it might be. So it adds a lot more checks and balances, which keep the university safe, but are obstacles, I think, to entrepreneurs. So for us, it was clear when we saw commercial value and we wanted to be able to patent our intellectual property that we needed to get our rights out of the university, or at least have their portion dropped. So we quickly realized we needed to pay for the IP ourselves and have more ownership ourselves. If you mess up your patent, especially, we were kind of a hard product that requires IP. If we didn't have IP, or if someone else kind of could make whatever product we had, there was nothing defensible. So we were very intentional about doing that properly, and we had a great lawyer on our side for that. He really guided us through the process and understanding, like, okay, exactly what have you invented and what is defensible about it.
Now, Steph has transitioned from scientific entrepreneur and startup founder to working at a venture capital firm, so she has the unique vantage point of seeing the value of IP from both sides. As a VC, she now advises startups on the importance of securing their IP early for any entrepreneur. Intellectual property isn't just a legal formality, but it's actually a strategic asset. It can often be the foundation your entire operation is built upon. But it's not everything.
In our due diligence that we do on a company to decide about investing, we pay attention to whether there's IP or not, but we're not going through the patent with a fine-tooth comb and deciding if we like it or not. Maybe other investors do that, but we don't do that. We just go out, we talk to customers of the company, we talk to potential customers of the company, experts in that industry. We try to understand if that space is growing or not, and if it's growing in the direction that this company is trying to grow it in. And we talk to people who know the founders. We talk to a lot of references. So we're much more focused on the kind of people and like post-product side of the business and understanding traction and how that traction will grow. So I think IP is important, but past IP, it's almost not important anymore. It's just like a foundation you have to set, and you have to have that foundation to build the house. But people aren't as focused on it once the foundation is there. Second to IP, those are the two things that are the biggest core of the value of business, is the people and the IP.
That was Steph, sharing from her experience how crucial intellectual property can be for a startup. And she's not alone. Many founders at District 3 realize early on that protecting their idea is a part of building something lasting. To dig deeper into this, we turn to someone who's been on the front lines of intellectual property for decades.
Intellectual property can be so important to startup companies, but it's not everything to that company.
This is Kathleen Marsman. You'll meet her later, but for now, what you need to know is that she brings more than 30 years of experience working with patents, and she's seen firsthand how the right IP strategy can make or break a company.
You don't need IP to have a company, for example. You can forge ahead without it, but oftentimes investors want to see it. They want to be certain that you've got something tangible before they invest in the company. So at the early stage, I think that IP matters a lot to show others that you have something worth investing in. There's all sorts of different kinds of intellectual property, but it does matter at the early stage because others are looking at you from the outside and they're saying, what do we really have here? We have an enthusiastic group of people with a great idea. How are we going to take that forward? So If you are a group of enthusiastic people with a good idea, then you probably already have some intellectual property. Now it's a question of how to protect it.
So that's myth number 1 debunked. Before product and customer, you need to lock down your IP. It's the foundation of your business. The next stop along our quest for IP will deconstruct myth number 2. There is a standard procedure to filing your patent. Let's meet Anmal, who will take us on his quest for IP and will tell us how it's not just as simple as Googling it. Let's find out.
The turning point for us was realizing that the only way to get the therapy to patients was to actually spend money commercializing it. And institutes notoriously don't do that. And so we realized that we had to hold the IP in a private corporation. And that's how the idea of the startup even came to light. We thought, okay, clearly an academic institute isn't going to fund all the work. They can't. They have thousands and thousands of new technologies that get issued patents on institute in a given year. They can't fund millions of dollars of work. So they find someone else to do it. Sometimes they find another partner that already exists, a big pharma company in our case. Or if the inventor is motivated to build a startup and commercialize it themselves, they will allow you to do that. And the way that they are allowed to do that is by a licensing deal. So my name is Anmal Nagpal. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a pharmaceutical company here in Canada who has spent the last 2 years attempting to build a company around an innovation and a drug that we created at an academic institute. And part of that journey is licensing out the intellectual property that we've created.
So to act on an invention created at an academic institute, as Anmal explained, you need a licensing deal. And with licensing always comes negotiation. Now, when I think of negotiation, I often imagine lawyers talking to lawyers while the founder just waits on the sidelines. But Anmal's team found a very different approach, one that was more cost-effective, which matters when you're a startup, but also delivered better outcomes.
My lawyers do not participate, and that was a strategic decision. The moment you bring a lawyer into the room, you kind of set the tone in a way that can be detrimental to the relationship. Most of the time, we will debrief independently. They will give me my talking points, and we will structure a negotiation tactic, and then I will go in and do it by myself.
Okay, so that's on negotiation, but I still need to know, why do we even patent things in the first place? Here's Anmal's take.
The life cycle of a patent is structured such that eventually it has to be free access. The idea is like you spend so much money getting the therapy to market, you should be allowed to recoup that cost and maybe make money. Whether the ratio of that is just or fair, that's I think an individual company question, how people set up their philosophies in an organization.
How much of your energy is going into this process of building out a patent?
Maybe half, 40 to 50%. It's the most fundamental step. We can spend another $100 million proving that the therapy works, but if we can't sell it, it doesn't really matter that we did all of that. And that's the scary part of how we've kind of built our society. No one gives you money for free. So if investors are going to spend that much money, they want it back, 20x. And if you don't have the right to actually sell, which is what the license or a patent provides you, then you don't really have anything.
So I think this gets at the crux of why we patent functionally. To get a therapeutic to market takes a lot of money. To get that money takes big investments, and to get those big investments, you need to have the right in hand to use your technology publicly. But if the big money only comes after you've secured the right to use your technology, after you have the patent yourself, then where does the money come from in the first place to get through those initial stages of patenting?
So in the early days, it comes from, in my case, the academic institute. They cover the cost. But in the license, they actually require you to repay that cost. And then any future costs associated with the patent, you pay as a corporation. And that money typically comes from grants and your pocket as founders.
Okay, so with a little bit of money in hand, Anmal can take his first steps into patenting. But how does he decide where that money will be best spent most effectively?
And did you know why you wanted to protect them everywhere, or you were just like, we need to protect everywhere?
No, we did. We sat down and we did an analysis of which countries would be best, and we ranked them. We ranked them by most urgent to least urgent, or biggest priority. And I sent them to my lawyer, and I said, "Can you do a cost estimate of our wish list?" That's what she called it too. This is your wish list, and the bill was, it's going to cost a total of almost $90,000. We're like, where are we going to get that kind of money from? We're a startup. We don't have $90,000. So we had to choose the bare minimum, which was Canada, the US, and the EU. Bare minimum for our industry. The bill is still $20K, which is a lot less than 90, but not a small amount of money.
And now that's on you. It's not on the institution to bankroll that. Like you said, now you're in the process of taking it over, so you're paying for this.
At that point, we thought, let's just use the lawyers we want, which were much cheaper, and let's just do the geographies we actually need for our industry.
I think Anmal might have glossed over something here. Finding the right lawyer can actually be a really big part of the challenge.
It's our bad for choosing lawyers who may not necessarily know the industry standard, but oftentimes we've had, in the early days, so this is a long time ago, we've had lawyers focus so much on the language and not enough on what it means for your company moving forward. What is the consequence of the language? But hyperfixation on the language itself. And that's something I learned to avoid. Now my view of it is, unless there's really a key clause or something, I focus on meaning and consequences to my company. Lawyers do the language on their own. I don't need to know the thought process behind the language unless it's relevant.
How did you learn this lesson?
A big legal bill. Many big legal bills. Being like, what are they billing us for? And it's basically conversations with lawyers about the language. And I'm like, wait, you billed me for this? So yeah.
Another big challenge that Anmal points out is not having enough information. As a scientist becoming an entrepreneur, you suddenly have to turn your attention outwards to things like, what is the industry standard? These sorts of things are not necessarily part of your academic journey, of your research journey, of the journey that you came through to build your technology. But you have to look outwards to build a business that's going to be effective and deliver impact.
Lows often for me involved misunderstanding the needs of my potential investors, misunderstanding the needs of my potential partners in the future, what they actually are looking for. So a lot of my lows were just not having enough information or having the wrong information. You have to rely on others to kind of guide you. You have to be forgiving of yourself, of the past version of yourself that didn't know. They just don't know. That's why you have to surround yourself with people who do. And then also be willing to take feedback from them, because you will get a lot of it. And then find your way through all that information to a path that works. And sometimes that takes a year.
So as much as becoming a founder is about learning as much as you can about business, some of the biggest learning is very, very personal. Next stop on our quest, we meet Shoham, biotech founder, and patent agent Kathleen. For real this time, I promise.
I'm Shoham Mukherjee. I am a CTO and co-founder at a synthetic biology startup that we started about 10 years ago now, in 2014. So we specialize in producing kind of high-value small molecules using microbial fermentation processes.
Kathleen Marsman. I'm a patent agent at BLG and based in Ottawa.
These two play a crucial role in helping us dispel myth number 3. IP is all about defending your slice of the market. It's about being able to take others down when they encroach on your territory.
your main important goal for IP should be freedom to operate, not offensibility. You're not trying to take down your competitor by having a patent. No, you're trying to protect your technology for the purpose that you're using it for. And that's the most important thing, because without that, you don't have a clear route to market.
Freedom to operate is sort of a buzz term that a lot of companies think the most important thing is that we are free to operate. It means different things to different people. From a legal perspective, what it can be used to imply is that there is no blocking patent out there that would stop you from working in your technology. Now, that doesn't mean that you yourself would need to have a patent to cover your technology. It just means that you've searched the world over, there's no blocking patent out there. If you're not aware of any blocking patents, say you've searched for blocking patents and you have enough experience to sort of look at those claims and interpret those claims, you can say that we as a company have looked for patents that might block us from using our technology or that we might have to operate under by seeking a license, and we haven't found any. Or you might say, yeah, we've found a couple that we're a little concerned with, and we might approach them for a license if our technology goes in that direction. That's a good answer. That doesn't mean there's no blocking patent out there. It means we've done our due diligence. We've done our homework. We've identified a group that we might license from. That's a positive. It's not necessarily a negative. And of course, a lot of investors want to hear the magic words, we're free to operate. But you can't get that guarantee from a law firm. And in fact, the times that I am usually asked to do a freedom to operate, it's a market clearance type thing. So the product is ready to launch. You want market clearance in a certain jurisdiction. I'm always asked about Canada. You can't guarantee freedom to operate. You really can't guarantee that to an investor, even though they would like to hear those words. But become familiar with the patent literature, know what's out there already, look at it from the perspective of blocking patents and who are your competitors and can you identify competitors? And that's a more positive way of looking at the patent literature.
So Kathleen debunks myth number 3 that IP simply means freedom to operate. It's a lot more nuanced than that, which brings us to myth number 4. A patent agent is only a service provider, not a partner. Shoham and Kathleen have been working together for more than 10 years.
When you first start a company like ours, IP is pretty much the most important thing. You can show as a milestone achievement. So we knew that we needed some help there. So I think that's how we kind of started interacting with Kathleen and her colleagues. It is a very complex thing to work with, and you can do as much reading as you want on IP. We've tried, you can just never match that kind of experience. So just her depth of knowledge about that was really appreciated, and we were very lucky to have her work with us. And just a background, she kind of understood what we're talking about and why that would be important for us.
I've also never lost sight that we are your service provider. It was a time where those first patents were really becoming active, and lots of decisions were needed. Money was flying out of your pockets. And I think just to try and help with mitigating that, it was a real pleasure at that time to step back in. And now here we are 10 years later, and an active portfolio. We manage it together. Me as your service provider, though.
I think you'll be a little more than service provider.
Oh, and friend.
That's how we think.
And big fan. Big fan.
Yeah.
I'm curious, were there ever moments where the two of you didn't quite have the same perspective on an approach, and how did you work through that?
I think that happens quite often where, again, as a founder for my technology, I want as much coverage as possible. I want to protect this technology and prevent everyone else from using it in any ways or means. That is what I continue to keep pushing for. On the other hand, Kathleen's job is to ensure that we actually get patents, which is maybe the important bit, and have good, strong, defensible patents that if it ever comes down to it, let's hope it doesn't, could be defensible. So I think that's where we always have some differing opinions.
Yeah, I feel sometimes that I'm both good cop and bad cop at the same time. I'll always be the advocate before the patent office and, putting forward the assertions that, yes, you deserve this and here's why that prior art is irrelevant. But when I read what the examiner says in reply, I have to sort of present that to you from a realistic standpoint. So then I'm being bad cop to you, whereas before I'm like good cop working in your favor when I'm arguing with the examiner.
So we do have to ask, what about best practices?
Tips working with patent agents. Keep the lines of communications open because you don't want surprises. So I think that's when you've worked with somebody for a while, you realize what the cost is going to be, that the cost might increase if you have iterations about it. So yes, selecting a patent agent from the very start is a blend between them wanting you as their client and also you knowing that they have the right technical background. So making sure the technology is a fit, it doesn't have to be a perfect match, but a fit that works well.
You were both mentioning money in a kind of tongue-in-cheek way in your responses, and I'm curious if Shoham, you could tell us a little bit more about how you came to understand and how you came to value the services around securing your IP.
What was important for us was developing IP. So initially, that's your main goal, to file as many pieces of paper to show to next investors saying, hey, look, we actually have something valuable, and it's valuable because it's going to get a patent and things around it. So initially, our aim or goal was to try and get as many of these provisionals as possible. And provisionals, in the grand scheme of things, are cheaper. So I think we filed, I don't know if you remember, Kathleen, maybe 14 provisionals?
There were quite a number, and
so
some of them rolled together and combined.
Mm-hmm.
You're going from many down to only a few. What's that process for, and what's it like?
Understanding what they wanted and having patent agents like yourself and David kind of guiding us through, like, no, it's not a rejection. They're just saying, you can do this, but can't do that. And then accepting that and kind of coming up with defining exactly what you want to protect. I think that is what we learned as a comparison. I think in our provisional, we had 40 to 50 claims, and I think in our final patent, we have one. So that's just how...
One of those
that's where
has a single claim.
Yes, one of them has a single claim. Yes.
The three original U.S. cases, yes.
I think you always have to factor those costs in. So as you're building your business, you always kind of keep cash flow models on hand and keep updating them. And they're both kind of your P&L, like profit and loss currently, but also kind of projecting over the next 2 years or so. So as Kathleen mentioned, they can provide estimates, right? So you use those kind of estimated costs to put those placeholder cash outages out there, so you can kind of build a budget for your future. So if you're going fundraising or something, you know how much or what portion of the raise or how much capital you have to kind of allocate towards your IP budget.
As the journey of Shoham and Kathleen shows, having the right advisor is key. At the end of the day, like always, it's about the people. Entrepreneurship means reacting fast, problem solving with few resources, a lot of grit and DIY. But intellectual property works differently. It forces you to slow down, think carefully at the very beginning, follow strict timelines, and get the right strategic advice. Through this quest, we've seen that IP is full of myths. It's not just paperwork, it's not just defense, and it's never a one-size-fits-all process. Done right, it can be the foundation that gives founders the confidence to build. Done wrong, it can hold a company back before it even launches. That's why the stories of Steph, Anmal, Shoham, and the insights of Kathleen matter so much. They remind us that IP isn't only about patents and claims. It's about people learning, adapting, and finding partners they can trust.
And I guess it's inherent that you have the right to use that.
Thank you.
If you need me to put that in an email or in writing, I will. Here I am thinking like I work at a law firm.
Thank you so much for listening. For District 3 and Concordia University, this episode was produced by Marion Kressmann, Paul Gibin, Nicole Dunsmore, and myself. We will be back next time with more stories and insights into the world of startups and innovations. Until then, keep dreaming, keep creating, and who knows, your sandbox might just become the next big thing.